Welcome everyone. Thanks for giving of your time for this webinar today. I'm just really excited to have Joe Murphy, who is the president of the Iowa Business Council, with us today, and his panelists. We have Wendy, who is here with IJAG, and then TJ hopefully will still be able to join us from Davenport. But just really excited about the opportunity to have them share around the work with the Iowa Business Council. As we know, the economy is changing rapidly and the skills needed in the workforce. So Joe, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Lisa. And it's so great to partner with School Administrators of Iowa. You guys just do such great work throughout the entire state, not only making sure that our kids and our future workforce here in the state are well educated, but supporting the school administrators around our state in such a robust way. So we look forward to continuing working with you. And thanks for all you've done during your time in that role. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So to start things off today, what I thought we would do is just quickly provide a little bit of context into our professional success proficiencies that the Iowa Business Council established just about a year ago that really provide, I think, the framework for operating within a professional setting across all occupations in our state, and something that our Business Council members were really striving to identify as we think about future workforce opportunities in this state. So before we dive into that, let me just take a few minutes and level set on what the Iowa Business Council is. We were established in 1985 at the height of the farm crisis. Back then, our founding members came together to determine how we could move the needle forward from an economic development standpoint to ensure that our economy remains well diversified so that the farm crisis never happens again. So we were established in 1985 with the mission to serve as an economic catalyst for growth in our state. And we're comprised today of 22 CEOs and top executives from some of Iowa's largest companies. And so we represent big business in the state of Iowa. And you can almost think of us as a mini think tank, where our primary functions are global thought leadership, engaging in things like this, research, which we'll obviously talk about today, and then advocacy as well, really trying to determine, what those pro-business solutions are for our companies and for Iowans individually as we move our state forward. And then the last thing I'd mentioned is our Business Education Alliance. And this brings together executives from Iowa Business Council and really the thought leaders shaping the landscape in education in our state. So we have representatives from the three public universities. The presidents of the three regent universities serve on this committee, a few community college presidents, private college presidents, as well as leaders in K through 12. So we have the superintendents from Davenport Community School District and Waukee Community School District as well. And the real goal there is to better align workforce opportunities with that employers provide with that educational pipeline that is our educational system in the state of Iowa. So while we only have 22 members in the state, we are a significant presence in Iowa's economy, representing big business. We have more than 150,000 or so employees employed under our 22 members. We have a combined payroll of almost $9 billion, research and development spend just in the state of Iowa, approaching $2 billion and almost $3 billion in capital expenditures invested here in the state of Iowa, which I think is a really important point when we think about the overall prospect of opportunity and fortune that Iowa Business Council members provide the state of Iowa. So to get into the meat of the presentation here and why we're all assembled on this webinar, the Iowa Business Council conducted a workforce review about a year and a half ago with the objective to learn current and future workforce needs from our Iowa Business Council members to be in a better position to assist, offer solutions, and identify themes to develop a strong, talented, and available labor pipeline here in the state of Iowa. Our workforce remains our top concern when we survey our members. It's always been the top concern when you think about the ability to attract and retain a high quality, highly talented workforce in our state. But we're a bit down in our numbers, quite frankly. It's not listed as prominently as it once was. And for context, when I first started about 6.5 years ago, about 95% of our members cited workforce attraction and retention as their top concern in their world. Right now, that number is about 50%. So not that it's fallen off a ton, but it's important to understand that the dynamics around the labor force and the labor economy have changed in our state. We have declining total employment, we have declining labor force participation rates over the course of the last several years, and that all factors in to this workforce review. And so what we did is we interviewed our business council members over the course of a few months. We met with their talent development teams, their HR executives, and a whole host of other people to try to figure out what their current needs for talent are. Are you looking for certain specific technical skills, whether right now in the immediate need, or are you looking for specific technical skills into the future, like welding or financing or coding or other things? We entered this process, admittedly, a bit naive, thinking that all of the responses would really be centered around those very specific, very technical skills. And sort of on the back end, we asked about specific soft skills that were most desirable for companies, like leadership and grit and resiliency and things like that. We also asked, some themes, some questions around the themes of disruption. What do you see in your future industry? How does it impact your workforce? What are the things that we should be on the lookout for as we move forward in this process? And what we learned pretty quickly was that our business council members really centered around themes of professional proficiencies or soft skills almost right away, and almost describing the situation in a verbatim manner. Very decisive in their description of why these items are important and why it's so important that their employees understand these skills and are able to speak fluently across the 4 buckets that we've identified. And we'll get into each one of them here today. And those 4 buckets are communication and social engagement, organizational and service mindset, resiliency and grit, and then finally a tolerance for ambiguity and change. I think it's important to note, and I'm sure you all have noticed this already, but all 4 of these buckets are uniquely applied across every single occupation in the state of Iowa. This is not just about, STEM. This is not just about finance. This is not just about manufacturing. Every single one of these professional proficiencies can be applied to literally every single job in the state of Iowa. And I think that's really important as we think about how we can apply this from an educational context perspective as well. Because one of the things that we get asked a lot about in the Iowa Business Council is, what is it that businesses are looking for in future employees? What are the things, what are the tools, what are the mindsets, what are the things that our businesses are looking for? And I think this answers at least partly that question. If you're proficient in all 4 of these categories, you are by far above where a lot of people are right now, and that will make you more marketable and more employable across a broad sector of industries and occupations. So let's get into the 4 buckets, and we'll start at the top with communication and social engagement. What we're talking about here is really the ability to clearly, professionally, and directly communicate in written and verbal forms across your team and directly to your supervisors. We talk about this all the time, right? How can you be socially cognizant on appropriate ways to engage team members? I know that this is a virtual webinar, but making sure that you're holding eye contact, making sure that you're carrying on conversation, putting your phone down in a meeting, right? Or in a conversation with your superiors or your supervisors. Hugely important in demonstrating the fact that you're willing to communicate, that you're willing to be socially engaged or professionally engaged with the topic at hand. And then how are you becoming adaptive to collaborating with a wide array of stakeholders and team members in working towards a common goal? And that's a consistent theme that we will see throughout this conversation today, is working towards a common goal. moving into organizational and service mindset, we want to be able to foster an ability to adopt an organizational and service mindset in that your efforts contribute toward the organization's, not the individual's, goal, mission, or strategy. So again, harping on that theme of the overall mission of the organization. And a high performer, in what we found, really understands the difference of this in this strategy, and understands that achieving a service mindset leads to more individual success and opportunity within the company, as opposed to purely identifying those individualistic opportunities that might get you ahead in the short term, but not in the long term. Which brings us to our final point here in this slide, which is developing that long-term vision, that long-term view, and having a realistic expectation of your current role within a company, and understanding that that's variable and can change depending on your supervisor and your team, and how your performance today in that role, even when you don't like it or even when it's difficult, impacts the trajectory of your career long term, not just within that company, but within that industry and with your overall career. Really important to take that long-term view. Resiliency and grit, I think we all talk about this in different ways, but as we think about it, we're really talking about working towards overcoming an obstacle or challenge, knowing that it could take a lot of time. I think in this sort of era of short attention spans and constant need for positive affirmation, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, we sometimes overlook or don't understand or don't remember sometimes that things just take a long time to work through at times. So staying committed to that long-term goal, working through adversity and other setbacks, that's where oftentimes the most important learnings come from, particularly in a business sense, and understanding that will make you better over time, and you just have to persevere through that. Demonstrating a strong work ethic while showing up on time is probably the most important thing that a young person can learn right now. There's been a lot of studies on talking about how maybe some of our work ethic tendencies are perhaps slipping a little bit. So being able to really put in work, really understanding that a strong work ethic propels you forward in a significant way is so important to remind our students and remind our career people. And then understanding, as part of that work ethic, as part of overcoming challenges, understanding that everybody receives constructive feedback. And so be ready and open to receive that feedback. Be ready and open for opportunities for performance improvement. That's really a way that you get better, right? I think that those should be welcomed conversations. So having an understanding that that's part of the role that an individual has to play in their professional career, and being ready for that as early as possible is certainly important. And then our fourth bucket is that tolerance for ambiguity and change. We need to be able to thrive in a setting where the circumstances or the directions are not always clear, right? And we've certainly learned that over the last 5 years or so. So how can we engage in problem solving, creative thinking? How can we understand that tasks assigned to you are your responsibility, knowing that you might not have the answers right away, and whatever your boss might have mentioned as a starting point might not be the answer, and you have to continue to work at it, going back into that growth mindset of resiliency and grit. You have to stay with the problem and work with the problem, and understand that you have to become a self-starter while working towards, again, that common organizational or team goal. And I think this is really where we develop some of our leadership characteristics as well, having built up a tolerance for change. Engaging in leadership development opportunities more and more early in your career is certainly important, especially right now as workers are advancing to retirement at an advanced rate here in the state of Iowa, as our population continues to age, as there's less and less people in our pipeline to take some of those supervisory roles, is important to learn that, and this is a good thing, young people are being promoted more quickly than they ever have before. So demonstrating those leadership abilities or leadership development opportunities has never been more important as we think about the future pipeline of our talent base here in the state of Iowa. So before we get into our panel discussion, some of the next steps that we foresee from the Iowa Business Council is how can we partner with SAI or other school districts around these ideals? How can we best engage from a business perspective with your students on how we can present opportunities for engagements or learnings within your schools. And then what opportunities might exist for curriculum development or experiential learning opportunities, knowing that all four of these categories cut across every occupation in the state of Iowa, impact every industry in the state of Iowa, and really set us up for long-term success. And I think that that's really a critical next step for us. We'll share contact information at the conclusion of this webinar, but that really kind of sets the stage for us as we enter into our workforce panel here that we have during this webinar. And of course, Lisa, please jump in with any insights you might have as well. But I'm really pleased to welcome in two additional partners that we work with all the time. The first, Wendy Mim-Harold, who is the president and CEO of IJAG here in the state of Iowa, just doing tremendous work for so many people all across the state. And then, of course, TJ Schneckloff of the Davenport Community School District, superintendent and a member of the Business Education Alliance with the Iowa Business Council, just an incredible resource as well for his community, for his students, and for the larger state. And so, maybe to start off the panel here, why don't we just take a quick second and expand on the introduction I just briefly provided. Wendy, let's start with you. Your role, IJAG, the role it plays, and then we'll jump over to TJ.
Okay, well, first of all, good afternoon. Thank you, Joe, for having me, and thank you, Lisa, and thank you to all the school administrators. I've been serving almost 20 years on Southwind School Board and working with our superintendent and principals, and I know the hard work that you're doing and the care that you're doing to take care of our young adults is just tremendous. So thank you for that. So I have the great pleasure to serve as the president and CEO of IJAG, Iowa Jobs for America's Graduates. And we serve over 11,777 students as of 4 weeks ago. I'm pretty proud of that, across 202 programs across the state of Iowa. And I have 24 years of experience working with economic development, workforce, and education. And before that, for 12 years, I served as a mental health counselor, brain health counselor, as I refer to it as, and as well as substance abuse counselor and working in rehabilitation. So I have got a wide variety of skills, and the need for us to be addressing workforce skills, especially in that employability, is why IJAG got involved with Iowa Business Council. I was doing research when we were updating our project-based learning curriculum. So I'll talk about that in a little bit, but that's Wendy.
Thanks, Wendy. TJ, over to you.
Yeah, TJ Schneckloff, very proud superintendent of Davenport Schools. In the journey, like many of you on this call are, trying to provide the best opportunities for our students to get to and through the bar with some type of certificate on their way to being a productive citizen, employment, fulfilling their dreams. One of the things, it's an honor to be a part of the Iowa Business Council, and I would just highlight a conversation that we had at the last meeting. I was in district looking at, how do we work with AI inside of our schools, and how do we make sure that our students are still coming out with writing proficiencies, and when should we not use AI and when should we use AI? And then I went to the Iowa Business Council, and the conversation they were having is, hey, how can you get kids certified to use AI to maximize their skills? And so that just highlights how important it is that the relationship between business and schools constantly come together in conversation to make sure that we are preparing our students for a world that's going to change faster than we can ever do in the curriculum. And so, Joe, I just applaud that you are partnering with the school administrators of Iowa to facilitate these conversations, because what you do is very powerful work, and it's very important, and it really does drive the future in Iowa. So I'm very, very thankful for the work that you do and to be a part of it.
Thanks, TJ. And it's great to continue to partner with you and your team. As everyone has seen, just in the couple of minutes that we've started here, both Wendy and TJ are just incredible advocates in your organizations and in the state and in your communities on some of these professional success initiatives or proficiencies. In your view, why does this matter so much for students, and what sort of things have you been engaging in to articulate these to your students? TJ, why don't we start with you this time?
Yeah, so you had described it very well, Joe, that the landscape is changing. If you look at generations, the baby boomers are retiring. We have a leadership void. We have jobs that are available now that haven't been available in the past. And so there's way more options to our students that are available, whether it be go to college or to enter into a trade or enter into the work field right away. So it's critically important that we create a competitive advantage for our students. So what experiences are they gaining throughout their high school career to give them a competitive advantage? To give you an example, we had a student that went through our student home build program, thought he wanted to be work as a framer, but quickly realized that there was somebody making the drawings for this and changed his his career path, and went into engineering at Iowa State, and I think is getting ready to graduate, or architecture, getting ready to graduate with an architectural degree. Well, would you rather have an architect that's built and framed a house before, or one that has never had that experience before? So our high schools need to change and give our students a competitive advantage, and that's exactly what that one student had. And so the rate at which things are changing, it's incredibly important that we stay on top of that for our students.
Yeah, great example there. Wendy, what would you add?
I mean, I'll just add a few things. I call it the three-prong approach. We know that baby boomers are retiring. When I did my PhD in 2010 dissertation, we were looking at the highest number of baby boomers retiring from 2020 to 2030. And we know, as you mentioned, Joe, earlier, our youth are going to be able to jump into those higher level positions. And the one thing, AI is changing lots in our world, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But we know that durable skills, human skills, and the skills that you talked about are absolutely critical for success, for us to adapt and learn, and the grit to be able to continue to do the job that we're doing through disruption, but also more importantly for our youth. Because we know that we're building Iowa's future, that we want them to want to work, live, play, grow, and learn in Iowa, and we need to make sure that we're connecting them to those opportunities, to the real jobs that are available, getting some of those real experiences in high school, but also having some opportunities. Part of grit and resiliency is having some failures, but in a safety net. So here's that opportunity for us to really focus on those employability, durable skills. And that is one of the things when you're looking at Gen Z, sometimes the workforce has a negative connotation of some of our Gen Zers. And I think we need to look at it as an opportunity, because Gen Z has that higher technology skills. They actually have, they're very mission based. They're very much one having that organizational mindset. And more importantly, they are able to learn the adaptability, collaboration skills, and resilience skills, because they've been living in a world that they've had to be resilient of everything that's been going on around them. And so as have we. They lived through COVID. Talk about resiliency, right? So I think that it's how do we help hone in on those skills and make sure that we can show those as micro credentials and those proven skills, so that when they go into that workforce, that we can show that they have those competencies. I think it's a great opportunity for us. And as AI continues to grow and disrupt our world on a daily basis, human skills are not going to change. The skills that you talked about, the ability to have teamwork, communication, resiliency, really being able to have that service mindset is what we're teaching in IJAG and what we infused into all of our curriculum. We redid all of that to take the skills from Iowa Business Council and also take the 10 durable skills and embed that, and using a third-party assessment through Covey. And so that's how we use that to be able to show that for the students to be able to demonstrate that success. That's one example.
That's great, Wendy. And let's stay on that theme on some of the strategies that you've employed, and then we'll jump to TJ to see if he has anything on this as well. But There might be some in the audience right now here live during this webinar, maybe, certainly, once this is distributed out through all of our networks, that might be thinking about, well, how do I even start on this? So what strategies have you employed to launch your program? You mentioned a little bit just now. What strategies have you used to launch these programs in your organization? And probably more importantly, what advice would you give to those listening in today on how to start?
Well, number one, we were doing our research, and then that's how I stumbled upon the research that the Iowa Business Council has done in Iowa, because we have the national research from McKinsey and Company and multiple other organizations and educational outlets that have the human capital skills. So understanding that and really looking at your curriculum, the one thing is that it's harder to assess and test on human capital skills. So it's really looking at, we do it through project-based learning, and we do it as a three-prong approach. We're able to do it through having evidence-based, being able to portfolio and being able to put that in a live portfolio with their showing that in front of other business leaders. So it's really having that opportunity to have those real world examples. I think it's absolutely critical, as I think most of us do in education, is that we have a connection with businesses. So we have the connection with businesses that are mentors in the classroom, speakers in the classroom, and also then moving up to those immersed job shadows, but also doing some co-instruction in the classroom with us on some of these skills. I think that is a simple way to be able to start implementing that across the state of Iowa. We further have taken it to the point where, as I stated earlier, that we are partnering with Covey, where we're doing it as a third-party assessment through our leadership and career ready. So we're doing it through 3 different units that we're teaching the students. And then we're making sure at the end of it, we're going through the 7 habits for highly effective, showing that in all of the areas that we talked about for all the different skills for durable, which is communication, leadership, critical thinking, collaboration, metacognition, which is problem solving, adaptability, critical thinking, collaboration, character, creativity, that growth mindset. And then we're also doing the mindfulness, which is really that social awareness, that EQ that we all need to be able to function on a daily basis working in a team. So we're able to embed that into the curriculum. And then we do that third-party assessment, but also more importantly, we do that final immersed with businesses to be able to demonstrate those skills. And that's a way that you can go about implementing that through micro-credentials, having business engagement, those work-based learning opportunities where they're going out and practicing those employability durable skills in the workforce, and having businesses assess that is a great way to get that just-in-time feedback.
Yeah, great point. TJ, what would you add on advice and strategies to launch these types of programs?
I think there's 3 really important things. First is some type of, what is it that your community wants from you? What is it that your businesses want from you? And so we embarked in a portrait of a graduate process, which really immerses your school district in the community, parents, students. What is it that you want? And you land on every student from Davenport. These are the skills that we want our students to gather. And then you bake that in the cake. It's not just another lesson you have. So the ultimate goal is, hey, you want to go get one of those Davenport school kids because they have grit, determination. They've done some type of hands-on training, and they probably have a certificate. That's the ultimate goal that we're going through. And then that way the entire school community is running in that direction. I think the second thing is you have to understand this generation and what motivates them. I heard some wonderful things on here they are very mission driven. Lifestyle matters to them. So if everything that you do is around like, hey, if you learn this skill today, you can make $23 an hour. Well, that doesn't mean anything to anybody. But that means you'll have 2 weeks vacation, that you'll live in a condo and you'll be able to drive an okay vehicle. They're like, oh, I can have that life. So lifestyle matters. Understanding when you say your standard today, you do this skill, you can make this cup of coffee today that we're going to learn in the FCS class. You can make this kind of living out of it. You could pay for your college with it. So doing some type of study, research, understanding that is critically important. And then for us, what are the programs that your community needs and your students want? Choice, exploration, awareness, opportunity. Build those into your program. We have 17 different pathways. We have a ton of space for our students to jump in, but the problem is if you don't get in one of our pathways at the start, you can't get all the way to the end of it. So we know that because we ask our community frequently. So build in a cadence at which you can get feedback because it does change. So I think those are three really, really important things when you're building your program. Have a firm base, know your audience, and then really cater to choice, exploration, awareness, and opportunity.
So really, really great points on strategies to kind of help launch the program, and that community buy-in is certainly key. What do you think about in the scope of some best practices that you've identified? But how do you sustain those best practices, and probably more importantly, how do you sustain the relationship with business entities, because businesses change, right, over the course of time? So what steps are you taking? What best practices are you employing to sustain those relationships with business? TJ, we'll start with you.
This is a very hot topic right now. 2.5 years ago, we were kicking out 26 to 27 welding apprentices going right to John Deere. And right now, that's not the case. So it ebbs and flows a little bit. So the word that we utilize is cadence. We have to be on a regular cadence with our human beings. That has to be at two places. One, it has to be in an organizational place. So there has to be a regular meeting established. There has to be some type of cadence of meeting with individuals, contacts at the district level. And then where those relationships are the most organic is incredibly important too, because that's where you can make quick movements, quick shifts. To give an example of that, Joe, at one of the Iowa Business Council meetings that we had a Drake professor come in and talk about artificial intelligence. And by week 9, he had to change the syllabus because the technology changed. And so that type of stuff happens in our courses too. There are robots coming out that are going to be doing a good chunk of the welding that is in some of our factories, say, for the future. So what does it look like to program that? We've seen a shift in manufacturing in our area. So we have an uptick in manufacturing inside of course requests. And so if you're not looking at your course requests, going with business to make sure that you have your teachers and staff appropriately, you can really miss the boat. And that takes constant identification at your district level and your building level, and those two teams have to stay calibrated. And that is something that takes a lot of work. And if you don't have a designated human being that's working on that all the time, that can be difficult. That's where you can see a lot of those liaisons, business liaisons are popular in our organizations. And if you don't have that, the chamber can be a very good resource for that to make sure that those meetings are regularly occurring. IJAG does a wonderful job staying connected to the business world and opening windows for us. And so I think those are some of the key strategies. Get it on a cadence, have it at two levels, making sure those are calibrated with what the community and business need, and adjust your staffing and scheduling to fit.
That's great. Wendy, what would you say has worked well from your perspective in creating and more importantly, sustaining these relationships with businesses? You have business partnerships all across the state,
Yeah.
small, medium, and large companies. What's your secret sauce?
So there's a lot of tentacles that go in place. Number one, I can agree more with TJ. It is about collaboration and partnerships. You have to have consistent communication with your businesses. And so we're a little bit more fortunate at IJAG because we're focusing specifically on those employability skills. But where our collaboration connection goes into that express mode is when we're really focusing on the work-based learning, getting students into internships, pre-apprenticeships, apprenticeships, into work site, supervised work site environments, making sustained work so that work-based learning piece at the experience, but also at the exposure. So that how we do that is we have statewide events that we're communicating with businesses. Then we have regional staff that are our program supervisors that are working with businesses. And then we have our career specialists with part of their job is to be connecting with businesses and continuously, as well as connecting within the school district, because it has to be a collaboration. There's more than enough work for all of us to be at the table, from the work-based learning coordinator to the CCTC, from the community college to the business liaison to whomever you may have at your school. There is more than enough work and connections because it is ever changing. So it's really making sure that we are constantly communicating. We started a database system with Cooter, which is called Connect to Business. And we've been piloting that for the last 9+ months. And it's been phenomenal. So it's where we can track it, because before we were tracking it in Google Sheets and different documents. And now we have a database what businesses want to connect with us. So that has been absolutely a phenomenal resource for us that we're continuing to do. All the forms are there for the students to sign off on. We have ABI also partnering with us to help educate businesses to get on. So that's where that collaboration piece comes in. Constantly need to be collaborating. We collaborate with Iowa Workforce Development, with their business counselors. We collaborate with the community colleges, with their CCT staff and their work-based learning coordinators. It is the only way to be able to keep up with the amount of work that needs to be done for those connections. And I would tell you, one of the things that is really a game changer is to ask for help. Lots of times we just don't ask to collaborate. And we try to do it on our own. Don't recreate a wheel. There are so many wheels out there. Partner. Partnerships are absolutely key with that collaboration. And I think if you do that, you're going to be very successful in being able to really hone in on those skills. TJ said it earlier, it's knowing what your community wants for those high-level skills, especially with those more technical skills that they're needing. But what Joe presented earlier about the top 4 skills, and if you look at what the top 10 durable skills are, those don't change, and they're not going to change that much with AI either. They're going to stay very consistent on those human skills that are needed. And I've got some great articles that I can share with you on that, but we've been very intentional to make sure that everything we do is that we're embedding those human skills, because that's what's going to propel our students in our civic, our communities, our leaders. They're going to be our leaders within our companies. They're going to be taking care of us as we continue to age. And so it's just absolutely critical that they have those human skills to be successful.
Joe, can I add something?
Yeah, please, Lisa.
Yeah, so I imagine most school districts already have this, but another connection is when you think about the career technical education programs that you're offering at your schools and advisory groups to help advise that curriculum and eventually advise maybe something needs to go in a different. So for example, if you had an IT pathway, you have an advisory group of business folks in that so that you can continue to evolve your curriculum. It's a great way to stay connected to your community, to have them involved, to help expand your curriculum or adjust, and then possibly even look at adding, as TJ talked about, other pathways that connect to the community that you're in.
Great connection. Really good point. We'd like to make this interactive with the people who are listening live here today. So if you do have questions, and we hope to get to some, if you do have questions, put them in the Q&A box or the chat box, and we'll get to those hopefully as we begin to approach our final time here. But it's been mentioned, I think, a couple of times in a lot of different areas, artificial intelligence. As you think about artificial intelligence and obviously the gains that it's had on all aspects of our life, personally and professionally, what connections can you make to AI from these professional skills? How do those skills fit into the AI conversation? And what are you doing to explore some of that? Wendy, do you want to start this one?
Yes, so we've been doing some research. We use the light touch within our IJAG with our organization, and we're looking at working with a curriculum director for AI, using it in the classroom, of how we'll be using that and putting in the governance and policies in place. I think that's absolutely critical. But when we were doing our research, the one thing is, and I just want to share this with you, the skills that we talked about that are needed earlier, if you look at any research, when you're looking at AI, because there are a lot of people think that they're going to lose their jobs. And honestly, it's just about doing jobs that are repetition and making sure that you're looking at those higher level skill things where we're still going to need people that understand big data and understanding AI and networking and cybersecurity, which is even going to become even more critical when you're looking at the expanded use of AI. But the skills that are not going to change are analytical thinking, resiliency and flexibility, leadership and social influences, creative thinking, technology literacy. It's not going to change. You're going to still need that active listening, and really basically to have that curiosity for lifelong learning. And so those skills are things that we can, because it's really hard to keep up with all of the technology of the future to change. But if you're teaching people how to learn, become lifelong learners, and teaching good study habits, good research habits, making sure that they're understanding how to think critically, analytically, solving problems, working in a team, being creative, those are skills that are going to set them up for the future. And so that's what we're really focusing on at IJAG, is to make sure that we're helping that with the schools that we're serving, is making sure that students have those skills. Because TJ said this earlier, if you don't start on that career pathway, you're not able to get it all done. And some of the students we serve aren't even able to get into those career pathways. So we want to make sure that they have some type of a jump start. So that's how we're looking at AI implementation and really staying focused on those professional skills.
TJ, what would you add on your perspective on AI and how it can apply to some of these professional proficiencies?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem schools have, and the faster you can solve it, the better, is that we still have to teach students how to write a paragraph. We still have to teach students how all of these things are formed. And so there needs to be a rules and regulations on how to do that, because you could use AI to write a paragraph and do math problems and all of those things. But then there comes a time where, just like in elementary school, you learn to read and then you read to learn. We need to find the happy spot in schools where we are utilizing AI to be a more effective communicator. So when I look at our Portrait of a Graduate top components, communication, I use AI every single day on my communication. I have it go research things for me. I find it makes me incredibly so much more efficient. And that's what our employers are asking. But we want our students to come out, have the ability to use this to make them more efficient, not to make their job easier. We still want highly productive workers. Self-management. That's another big skill of ours. If you think about how artificial intelligence can make you a more productive person by managing your personal time better, by analyzing things better. So I think schools need to find that sweet spot where we recognize we have to learn how to do these things, and then from here we're going to use them to learn and apply that. We have that same type of scaffolding that occurs in our elementary schools. We need to figure that sweet spot out, because the businesses want kids that have a certificate in artificial intelligence. We had people say that at our last business council meeting, and that was a big eye opener for me. And so that is incredibly important that we figure that out, because kids can use this tool to do nothing in school, and that's our biggest fear. That's not how we want it to be used. But our businesses are asking them to come out with to be literate about this topic. And so it's almost like a battleground that we're fighting in education right now.
Yeah, it's how do you use the tool, right? I mean, there will be some that want to use it just as the easy button or the escape hatch, and that will only get you so far. But how you can harness the tool and the power to supercharge your learning and your ability to be productive and innovative, I think is really the key there. We just have a couple of questions left. I don't see any questions yet in the chat, which is fine. But TJ, we'll start with you. You know, taking a long-term view, getting into one of our themes, right? One of our four categories, but taking a long-term view, are there other skill sets that need to be developed that you're beginning to identify that businesses and educators should be aware of, or that we should be planning? You know, the four topics that we talked about previously are pretty broad, but are there others on the horizon that you think that we should begin to be thinking about so that we stay on top of this moving forward?
I think that the broad topics that we have, I think encompass a lot of everything that I'm hearing in our business community. Um, the ones that we heard the most from our community when we went out and about are the same exact ones that you talk about in the beginning. The the other one that I would say that kind of pops in there is emotional intelligence. How do you read a room? Because students aren't in a room with other people. I'll never forget the time I walked downstairs. My kids are 12 years old. And I'm like, go outside and hang out with your friends. And like, we are hanging out with our friends. We're playing a video game online. Like, they have a different idea of hanging out or being in a room or socializing. They have the ability to do that. Well, it's really important to be in a room and be able to conversate with people, to be able to read the room, to be able to tell when someone isn't operating at their highest, those types of things. And so that notion of emotional intelligence has started to pop up in our community. And how do we build that into our curriculum? How do we create those opportunities? I think you're seeing a movement of it to put the screens down, and that simple movement in our schools really can kick out a different production. Students start looking at one another, they start having conversations with one another. So this notion of balance between screen and actually interacting with human beings. Other than that, I think the things that you hit are spot on. The other thing our community said that was very interesting is I wish there was a class on how to pay your taxes. I wish there was a class on how to invest in like real classes. I want to invest real money. So our students don't want to come out and not know how a rental agreement works, not know how, because they want to be able to enter the real world right away. And I would say that those types of skills are how do I manage that life on that other end? And our employers are saying the same thing. Like they come out and they have no idea about any of this. And I don't think that's a new topic, but it's still incredibly important.
Yeah, it resonates for sure. Wendy, what would you add to the list?
I'm just going to add a couple things to it. Financial literacy, from understanding credit rating to understanding 401ks and understanding that investment. Our youth are also very thrifty. They want to save money. I laugh. My son was saving more money and like living off of absolutely nothing because he wanted to retire when he was 50, right? So it's that, but to understand that investment portion, that financial literacy, that budget, buying the car, the taxes, we're hearing that that's absolutely a critical skill that we embedded into our IJ curriculum as well. And I would tell you, along with emotional IQ, EQ, absolutely is critical. Same thing, we talked about it, you said it, but it's a communication, it's oral and in writing. We actually train on GNAP. It's greeting, your name, your affiliation, purpose, just networking skills with someone because they network all the time on social media, but how do I do that in person? And then also, how do I make sure I have my communication fluent when I'm on a Zoom meeting and I'm trying to read? It's harder to read people when some of them are multitasking. So how do you handle that? So understanding that skill, relating, bringing that energy, having that positive energy about work, having that optimism and passion, because there's so much happening around us. It's easy to get down. So when people come to work, they want to feel good about it, right? And so working on those skills is something that we absolutely hear from our businesses. It's about that passion, that optimism, that belief that you can do it. That goes along with some of the resiliency and communication that you talk to. And the last skill that I would say that I'm constantly working on with people is that growth mindset, which is adaptability, ambiguity, change. But the biggest thing is to believe that you can do it. And it is possible. It's going to take a lot of grit. It's not always easy, but it can be done because it's just that tenacity to stay at it. So I would say that that's what we actually hear from students. I hear it from my staff, and I hear it from the businesses that we're working with that are coming into our classroom.
Thank you, Wendy. Really great comments there. We do have a question in the chat, so thank you, Charles, for typing in. And this is from the perspective of higher education. So Charles is the undergraduate dean at the Tippie College of Business at the University of Iowa, and he writes, how can higher education help with AI training in other pieces as we look at the shared ecosystem we all live in? So how can higher ed get in on this opportunity and help everybody out?
Well, one, I think it's always that having a framework that would help adaptability for looking at what does that AI certificate look like that TJ started talking about, having that framework so that it could be something that school districts could share, IGI could share. That's always a benefit because it takes time, money, and energy to develop something. So that's off the cuff, my first thought.
Yeah, I would agree. I think a lot of times our universities and programs like the Tippie School of Business have their pulse on what's going on in the real world at a faster clip than maybe we are. And getting that information to the K-12 level is vital because we can change our curriculum, and we need to become more nimble. We need to be more nimble than we are right now with the adjustment of things. And that's hard to say because it takes a act of Congress to get anything changed in our course guides. But staying connected with K-12, keeping the pulse on the business world, because a lot of times our students come out and they have a really good idea of what's in store from the college based on the pathway that they took, or it's completely overwhelming to them. And so just staying connected, I think, would be very beneficial. And utilizing the Iowa Business Council, utilizing SAI, having conversations like this are great places to start because it really allows a conversation to happen and then action to come out afterwards, which I think is very beneficial.
Thank you, TJ, and thanks for the question. I'm going to go around the virtual screen here and offer our panelists brief closing comments or a final thought. And we'll start with Wendy, then go to TJ, and then close out with Lisa.
Well, first of all, thank you for all that you do through SAI and Iowa Business Council. It is absolutely having a positive impact on our state. So thank you for your work and thanks for allowing to be here. And it's just a privilege to be able to serve Iowa and serving the students. And I leave you with it. We all know this, but the hope and the tenacity and energy that our students that we have across the state, we have a bright future. We just have to continue to hone in on those skills and to make sure that when they leave our institutions that they have that in their suitcase to take with them. So, and it's just an honor to be a part of this partnership. So thank you. And I'm part of the school districts. I'm very grateful.
TJ.
Yeah, first of all, I want to applaud SAI and IBC for getting together, having a conversation around this. I believe we are the profession that makes all the professions. And so that's exactly what education is. And if we continue to have that mindset, we continue to provide the best learning environments, opportunities, choice, exploration, and awareness for our students, they'll enter the world better prepared. And that's all we can ask for. And again, places like this for us to have that conversation are critical, making connections, networking. I love what Wendy said. There's lots of circles out there. Go steal one, because I steal circles all the time at SAI. So that's kind of what it is. That's probably what SAI stands for, circle stealing information. So anyway, just really appreciate the opportunity, and it's just an honor to be in this space with some of the best educators in the world. So
Awesome. Thank you, TJ. Lisa.
Yeah, well, thank you, Joe. I really mean thank you to you for reaching out to me back in the fall, bringing this to my attention. It's important work that the Iowa Business Council has done. I appreciate the collaboration because I know from sitting in TJ's seat just 5 years ago, how important having our students, Iowa students, really have these skills when they leave our schools to be successful in whatever pathway they take, whether that's a 4-year, a community college, enter the workforce, military, whatever that may be. You know, I really believe that stronger communities equals stronger schools equals stronger communities, or vice versa, really. And so when we're working together with the business community, that helps strengthen our schools, and our collaboration helps strengthen the economy when we have strong schools. So one thing that I thought of earlier when you had one of your questions is when we think about the skills that you identified at the beginning of this webinar, oftentimes we automatically go to our high schoolers. But when you think about how can we embed these skills already through that K through 12 environment, like what is having grit and that look like at that elementary level as well. And I think that's something that we continue to grapple with in school systems, and something that we need to think about as well. So again, thank you for bringing this to us. And then thank you for allowing us to bring this to our members across the state of Iowa.
Well, we really appreciate the opportunity to partner with SAI and with TJ, with Wendy, your organizations, and we look forward to future conversations ahead. What we will do is we will download this webinar, get it up online, and share this out with all of you. We just really appreciate your time today. We thank you all for all the tremendous work that you're doing for our state, for our future workforce, and for our state's economy. So thank you all for being here today.